Question: have your thighs ever rubbed together, creating a rash because of friction? Chafe is no joke, but thanks to Megababe, it's also no problem. Thigh Rescue is the anti-chafe stick made for chafers by chafers. Get Megababe's Thigh Rescue and experience what 10,000 five-star reviewers rave about. Thigh Rescue stops chafe. With one sold every 30 seconds, you better run to megababebeauty.com.
Coming up on this episode of the Mario Rosenstock podcast.
But it's also, I'm afraid to say, Mari, one of the greatest traits of psychopaths.
Exactly. Have you done that test as well, Ed?
So I'm afraid to say that all along our state pathologist was a fucking psychopath.
I think the homicide rate went up as soon as I said,
yeah, was it causation here or was it just a coincidence? Oh, look what we found here. Oh, I can tell you exactly what happened to this poor lad. This ain't fucking done it.
You know, I had absolutely no idea going into my chat with former state pathologist Marie Cassidy that within half an hour we'd be having the kind of crack that you've just heard in that clip. But there you go. And that's the thing that's always fascinated me about Marie, how she could have one of the toughest, most serious and emotionally impactful jobs that you can possibly imagine in the country and yet be so upbeat and positive when not on the job. And in a bizarre sort of way, I got to thinking, that's probably the only way you can make it work. That's the only way you can successfully do a job like that. And we get into all of this in our chat with so much more.
It's not something you can get used to. It doesn't grow on you. You don't think, well, maybe after I've seen 10 stabbings, I'll be fine. No, all you ever see is death, violence. And a lot of people just couldn't cope with that for 40 years. All of the men in the room were more than happy to have me there, and they never treated me any differently. Their wives, on the other hand, were maybe not quite so happy at having this perky little person in the room with their husbands. I assume they just thought I was there to try and find a husband. But I reassured them that I've already got one of them back at home. I don't need another one. With Annabelle Kriegel, it was the first time I had stood in a scene and gone, who did this and why? And once you start looking at the whys, the wherefores and who did it, you're straying into that territory of influencing your opinion. And I'd always said, if that ever does happen, I have to go.
My full chat with Marie Cassidy coming right up. But first, an announcement. Next week, April the 29th, I have a special announcement on Monday regarding a special show that I'm doing. Gift Grub Live 25 in a very, 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 very big venue. You might guess which one. In Dublin next year. It's to mark 25 years of Gift Grub, and 25 years of Gift Grub is next week. May 3rd, 1999 is when the first Gift Grub went out, and I've been doing it 47 weeks a year for the last 25 years. Can you believe it? I cannot believe it. Where has that time gone? So keep your ears peeled if you're a fan of Gift Grub over the last 25 years for a very, very special announcement about a very, very special one-off show. For now, we go into the comedy archives for this week on the Mario Rosenstock podcast. You may remember some rumours of Boyzone investing, apparently, in a football club recently called Chorley FC. Well, as you can imagine, Ronan Keating's phone was absolutely hopping.
Fair play. You've reached Ronan Keating. Leave a message. Come on! How are you, buddy? It's Keith here. This Chorley FC thing is brilliant, buddy. But come here. I was looking at all the lads. Their teeth are knackered. They need white teeth when they come out onto that pitch. So I've booked us all in to the clinic in Turkey. We can get a top up while we're at it, buddy. Cheers, buddy. Ronan, it's Louis. Listen, thanks for the offer, but how many times do I have to tell you? I don't manage football teams. I manage bands. And look, Simon isn't interested either. I asked him earlier. Ant and Deck aren't returning my calls. Good luck, Ronan. You're on your own. How are you, buddy? It's me again. Got your message regarding tactics. I had an idea. How about we put our back four all sitting on stools? Then, when the other team attack, our lads suddenly stand up and start singing When the Going Gets Tough. How's it going? This is Roy Keane. Stop ringing my number at the end of the day. Oh, credit to desperation. I've no interest in your job. Just stop it. Stop ringing me number. Good luck.
Hello, this is Stephen Kenny. I saw an ad in the paper regarding your vacancy for Charlie FC. I have experience at international level. Looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Fair play. Message to self. Idea for song. This is brilliant. Charlie is all that you can say. Cheers. Sorry, I shouldn't be saying cheers to myself. Good luck.
And funny enough, that's a story I've heard very little and almost nothing about since it kind of broke mysteriously in the media just a few weeks ago. Okay, let's head straight over and meet Marie Cassidy. Marie was Ireland's first female state pathologist and spent almost 14 years in the role. I wanted to understand how one can have such a serious and emotionally impactful profession, yet be so upbeat and cheerful, quirky, outside of work hours. That's where we started our interview.
Marie, lovely to talk to you, and thank you for joining me on the Mario Rosenstock podcast.
Delighted you invited me on. Looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, me too. Let's see where this goes. I was looking back at your interviews, some of the interviews you've done with Patrick Keelty and Tommy Tiernan, etc. And I noticed in the interviews how perky and chipper you are. And even now with me, you've got a permanent sort of smile on your face. And I can't just write that down to my personality. It must be your personality. And is that true that you are a person who is upbeat, buoyant, optimistic, and chatty and friendly? Would you describe yourself as that?
It's about it in a nutshell, because I think people assume that because of the position I had, you have to be terribly serious, and you do, and you honestly do have to be at times. But outside of that, I'm just like everybody else, and you have to relax and get away from that serious side. And I think it's quite galling for people that I tend to be quite upbeat and happy, and my glass is always half full. Well, I try and make sure it's as half full as long as I possibly can. Yeah.
I write comedy sketches, and I do comedy sketches on the television and on the radio. And actually, I wrote down, I kept hearing your name on the radio, for years. And even before you, I would hear your predecessor, Dr. John Harbison's name. And it dawned at me at one stage that every time you heard Brian Dobson saying, "The state pathologist is on our way to the house," that it always was the precursor to very, very, very bad news.
Exactly.
And so I wrote down in my sketches that the state pathologist keeps visiting local places in town, but she only wants to have dinner or call into the shop. And people just go, "Did you hear the state pathologist is coming over to the hotel later?" And the other person goes, "Oh, Jesus Christ, what happened?" That's a peculiar life to have, isn't it, Marie?
It is. And it's given me a lifelong phobia of phones.
Yeah.
Because people were never phoning me up to say, "Oh, hello, what's the crack?" They were always phoning me, and they would start off and they would say, "We've found," and I'd go, "Oh, here we go again." I was more than happy to jump in at that point and do whatever I had to do. But it's left me with this, as soon as a phone rings, I think, it's going to be bad news. It's going to be bad. So all my family tend not to phone me. We use WhatsApp a lot.
Yeah. So Marie just goes, "Why wasn't I invited to that birthday party?" Because we're not fucking ringing you, that's why. You have a peculiar interface with the phone. Like you come from Glasgow, is that right, Marie?
That's right. Yeah.
And when you started your profession, was it a very male-dominated profession?
It was actually, because I came in a long, long time ago. I started off in medicine in the 70s and then became a pathologist in the 80s. And when I came into forensic medicine in the mid-80s, I was the only woman in the room, which didn't faze me at all, because that kind of thing has never fazed me. Because I'm there as a forensic pathologist. I'm not there because I'm female. And they're not there because they're male. I assume they're there because they can do the job. And I've always had that attitude. And I must admit that all of the men in the room were more than happy to have me there, and they never treated me any differently. Their wives, on the other hand, were maybe not quite so happy at having this perky little person in the room with their husbands.
Why?
Well, they thought that was rather unseemly because I was going in, not only was I going into males, they were of a certain age, and therefore the wives were also of a certain age. This sounds terribly sexist, but they were the coming from that era where when women got married, you gave up work and you looked after the husband. And so they thought this was anathema, that this woman was coming in and going to do the same job as their husbands, which is already a peculiar thing to be doing anyway. And they just couldn't get their heads round about why I was there. I assume they just thought I was there to try and find a husband. But I reassured them, look, I've already got one of them back at home. I don't need another one.
The husband and wife team who've literally seen it all. Yeah. I mean, what kind of training prepares you to be a forensic pathologist? Now, what I mean by that is, obviously, it's a a medicine procedure. It's a medical procedure. It's medical training. But like, I mean, how far can you take it in the training? Because there comes a time where literally your job becomes something far different than you've ever seen in training. So for example, when you're training as a forensic pathologist, I mean, how far do you go? I mean, forgive my ignorance, but do you start with vivisections with animals, for example? Do you do any of that, or do you just study about blunt force trauma and all this sort of stuff? And
you just get told, off you go. There's a body in a field. Good luck.
Do you?
That's it, and you're off, But you're coming from a background of medical training, so you've been through medical school. You've done 6 years of that. You've done your couple of years in the hospital wards, and then most of us have then done 5 years training to be a hospital pathologist.
Yeah.
So we've dealt with death before, so that doesn't faze us.
Yes.
But what you're not prepared for is violent death. Nobody prepares you for that because you just can't. And so you either go into it and you can cope immediately, or else you just don't bother because it's not something you can get used to. It doesn't grow on you. You don't think, well, maybe after I've seen 10 stabbings, I'll be fine. No, you either go into your first one and say, I can cope, I can deal with this, I know what I'm here to do, I can go on with it, or else you just think, no, I think I'll maybe try something else. I'll try another branch of medicine. And I've seen that often because people look at me and they think, Jesus, it can't be that hard if she can do it. And then after a day or so, they think, oh, I couldn't do that. Well, imagine that for 40 years. All you ever see is death, violence. And a lot of people just couldn't cope with that for 40 years.
Did you ever meet somebody did you ever see colleagues who then you saw, oh yeah, they're not cut out for it, and immediately they depart the scene? Did you witness people who discovered?
Oh yes. And as I say, you discover it very early on. You maybe can disguise it for a short period of time, but it gets to people and you can see that happening.
And what do you see?
Well, you see that they aren't coping. The people, that affects everybody differently, but see, people start to become withdrawn. They tend not want to go and do things. And I mean, I've seen it in even very senior people. I had a professor that I worked with in Glasgow, and after a period of time, he just couldn't cope with the level of violence in Glasgow anymore because it was pretty bad. So it happens. That does happen.
I mean, as you go through your profession and as you get a bit more experienced and you meet and other pathologists, like what kind of, if you can possibly answer this question, what kind of a personality, if any, do you think you need to be able to do this job?
We're all very different. I always say that it'd be quite interesting from an outsider to come to one of our meetings, because in medicine, you do find your tribe. So you go to meetings of physicians, and they're usually very smart, but the surgeons take it one step further on because they're the ones that come in with the dicky bows and all the rest of it because, God, they're God. And then you get to the GPs and they can be a wee bit, sort of more casual. Then you come into the forensic pathologist and you'd be thinking, is this a rave crossed with Brigadoon? Because we're all very, very different, all very different personalities. We all agree that there is something probably not quite right with us all, but it gels and it works. And we all got on famously.
Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. And what do you remember? Like, what do you remember from the first time you realized, yes, maybe this is what I want to do? I mean, is this, obviously, let's get back to basics here, Marie, like I want to be a fireman. I want to go to the moon. I want to be a rock star. And then maybe, you get a bit older and you go, oh, God, I'd like to be a lawyer. God, okay, fair enough. Hopping out slightly, but, I'd like to be a chartered accountant. But who is the one that says, I want to be a pathologist? And when did you, if ever, did you first discover that within yourself?
Well, I learned I wanted to be I didn't want to be a pathologist, put it that way. I wanted not to have to deal with live patients. That was the way it came about for me, because I had gone into medicine quite naive, thinking that all you did was wander about a ward with a white coat on, a stethoscope round your neck, and for some reason people get better. I didn't realise there was a lot more to it than that. And I was probably halfway through my training and I thought, well, this is a lot harder than it seemed. And not only that, these patients, they whine all the time. There's always, it's like, now there are some of you are very ill, and I accept that and appreciate that, but there's a lot of you there's hardly anything wrong with you. Just get on with it. And so I thought, I don't have a bedside manner to continue with this. So coming towards the end of my, the medical training as an undergraduate, I was beginning to think, no, I need to think of an exit strategy here to get me into something that I'm not dealing with live patients every day. And I decided, I was looking through the list, you go through the checklist, could I do that? No, good Lord, no, I couldn't do that. And then I saw laboratory medicine, and I thought, the very thing. You're still a doctor, you're working in the hospital, you're dealing with patients to a certain extent, but you're not seeing them face to face. You're seeing the bits and pieces that somebody else takes and sends them to you. And I thought, that sounds right up my street. And that's what I decided to do. And I actually did love that. And then one day, I asked if I could go to forensic medicine. And I went in and I just thought, this is absolutely amazing. This is incredible. Why didn't anybody tell me that forensic pathology existed? And I just felt immediately, oh, this is where I should be. This is where I can contribute. This is where I'm going to find my feet. And that was it. I never came back. I stayed in the dark side.
Yes. So actually, there was an element of you which loved medicine and loved the doctoring, but you were like a doctor, except you didn't want your patients to be able to talk back to you.
Yes, and I didn't like the dying process, which seems a bit silly, but I found that traumatic, dealing with people who were dying. It's much easier to deal with them afterwards.
Yes. I have a kind of a quote here. It might be paraphrased, but it says, the first time you were in a mortuary. Now, when most of us are in a mortuary, it's for terribly grim reasons. Yeah. But when the first time you were in a mortuary, it felt like Narnia. Explain that to me.
Because I suddenly discovered that what really interested me was why people died. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, there's lots of clever people. I mean, I came through university with 200 people in my class. And I thought, well, 199 of them can go and do something with the live ones, and they can do clever stuff and keep people alive. But what fascinated me was why people died. Why did you die? You were being treated. When you were in hospital, you were in intensive care. You very, very well. And you still died. What went wrong? What happened to the body? What happened inside you? And then I discovered, as I say, the violent crimes. And that got me intrigued as well, because you'd see people who survived certain injuries and other people who didn't. And that's always kept me fascinated about the why. Why did this person die?
Oh yes. Okay. So one of the aspects of your job is purely biological and is purely pathological to discover why certain processes in the body weren't able to withstand such trauma, or why certain systems within the body broke down. Is one of your other areas of expertise? Sorry, I'm just being very amateurish now, and I'm literally taking this from TV. When you're examining a body, are you also doing that stuff they do on TV where they go, "Oh, I think this person may have been struck with somebody who's right-handed," or that kind of things? Do you examine that kind of area? In other words, how that person was attacked?
Yeah, because that's the next step in the process. Because after you've been doing it for a while, you become regarded as an expert. So once you become regarded as an expert in forensic pathology, you're allowed to express an opinion. And so you're not just saying he was stabbed 36 times. You then go on and say, well, I think that with the pattern of injuries, this suggests that they were facing one another to begin with. Then he tried to get away. And it looks as if from the angle of the entry wound that he may have tried to get up some stairs away and somebody came after him. So you can then start to express an opinion, but it's only an opinion. So someone may look at those findings and come up with something else, another scenario. But that's what we're looking at. And very often people will ask us, could they have been left-handed or could they be right-handed? And we always have to say, these are all dynamic situations, and therefore you would need to know where the parties were in relation to one another. If you've got CCTV, if you've got witnesses who say they saw where they were in relation to one another, you can perhaps come up with something that might be helpful to the Gardaí.
Yeah. And so in a sense you're helping the police, the Gardaí and the authorities to paint a picture literally of what went on. And of course by doing that you are in a sense helping yourself to paint a picture as well. You're thinking quite deeply about it. You're focusing on reproducing, albeit gruesome as it may be, reproducing what may have happened between those people on that night or on that day or wherever it was. And of course, this probably then leads you, with all these patterns that you developed in your mind, to be in an ideal position to write something to write something in that genre. So, and it's what you've done. You've written, you wrote a body of truth.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of your expertise go into that.
Well, it is, but it is fiction, so it tends to go a little bit further than I would be allowed to. I mean, even the guards would go, right, fine, you've said enough, right? Yeah. Back in your box, right? Thank you, goodbye, we'll get you out the next time.
Right.
So, yeah, you have to be very, very careful in the real job, because you can only take things so far. You can't go into the realms of fantasy. So you have to say this is something that is probably happened. This is possible. And there's a slim chance that this could have happened. So you then have to be very careful when you start, expressing your opinion.
Do you remember your first crime scene, the first scene in which you were the one where they said, off you go now, in you go, have a look at this person? Do you remember what it was, where it was, what circumstances it was, and could you tell me about it?
Oh yeah, it was a long time ago. Well, that'd be 1986 before I went to one on my own, and it was in Glasgow, and it was in the old tenements, and it was a horrible night. And I can remember parking the car up and walking up to the tenement building, and this was unfortunately, at that time, there was a lot of drug-related deaths, and this was another drug-related death. But unfortunately, this poor crater, when he collapsed, he'd actually collapsed against an electric fire, and the place had gone up in flames. Mm-hmm. So he was quite badly burned, and so that they were quite concerned about the circumstances. Then was somebody else involved? It turned out there wasn't. It was just another drug death tragedy. But I remember it very, very well, because I was going in there thinking, well, at least it's not very far away from our office. And if I run into terrible problems, I can always just shout and say, can somebody come and give me a hand? But we didn't have mobile phones in those days.
Mm-hmm.
These pager things. So it'd be, SOS, get me out of here.
Yeah. And so after something like that, then you go home, you sleep, and then I suppose you realize, well, I can do this job. And it doesn't seem to give me trauma. It doesn't seem to traumatize me, unlike who we've talked about earlier, that other people seem to become withdrawn and they weren't able to do it. And so you found that you were able to do it. Does that mean nothing shocks you?
Does anything shock me? Well, not really, because I have seen a lot of awful things, and I've seen the terrible things that people do to one another, and I've heard the reasons why they've done it. So you do become a bit, you go, oh, right. I mean, you do come into some things and you go, gosh, that's a bit much. But it's not more than that. You just go, oh, well, get out the bit of paper, write it all down, start taking notes, getting on with the job. So I don't think there's anything really does shock me to that extent. No.
So then, by alternatively, do you, unlike normal people, in inverted commas, do you get completely shocked by totally different things? Like the lobster might be off in a restaurant or something and you just start going absolutely mental. Do you compensate for it? Do you overcompensate for it by getting over-shocked at other stuff?
Only when I'm driving. That's where I vent my anger when I'm driving. I'm one of these people, I mean, even my children who say, if I don't eat something in a restaurant, they'll go, just complain. I go, no, it's fine. It's fine. Nobody died. Not yet, anyway. So don't worry about it. It will be fine.
Nobody died. What a catchphrase to have. I know. And come here. Let's say you're watching something on TV, and there's an awful lot of crime stuff on TV. I mean, do you ever find yourself going, for fuck's sake, that's totally unrealistic?
Probably every night. But I understand why it has to be, because the real life is very, very different. And over the years, because I've been working with producers and directors and things for a long time, and we go way back to Glasgow when I was worked with the people from Taggart. And so you get to know, because I used to think, but why don't you do that? Why, in Glasgow, in Scotland, you don't get one straight pathologist. Every case has to have two because of the law. The Scottish law is very different from English law and from Irish law. It's all to do with corroboration. And I always said but would you show your scenes in the mortuary? There's only one pathologist. They used to go to me, oh, goodness sake, stop complaining. And I go, but that's the way it is. That's the law. And then they would, just to appease me, they would give a lingering shot or a pair of Wellingtons, an empty pair of Wellingtons at the door. And they would go, is that good enough for you?
Yes.
And I thought, yeah, I get it. You can't have too many people, and people have to sort of double job and do nixers and do all sorts of things, because apparently we, the public, are not too good at keeping tabs on people, in films and in books. We like the cast to be small. Mm-hmm. So I get what they're doing and how they're trying to get there. And nobody ever solved a crime in an hour, for God's sakes. Yeah.
I mean, do you remember, for example, I used to remember from my youth, actually, I used to watch Quincy. Did you ever see Quincy? Yeah, he was a coroner. And I suppose that was reasonably tame. But I'm trying to think back of scenes in movies I've seen myself. I was seeing that I went, oh, that might be something she might have responded to. I don't know if you've ever seen Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
There's a scene in Silence of the Lambs where Jodie Foster is brought to examine one of the first victims of Buffalo Bill. And I thought, it always stays with me, because I thought it's one of those scenes where she comes in, they pull back the body's lying on the table on the gurney, and they pull back the sheet. And there's this, it's the way the camera always catches the way somebody reacts. They usually lose a breath, or they turn their head, or you can feel that they've smelled something really bad, or that something has taken their breath away. That's the way they usually communicate it on. So they go, they go like that. And then there's that moment. I mean, they don't show you the gruesomeness of the body. They use the actor to communicate. Mm-hmm. Do you remember those kinds of scenes? And does that register with you that what she was doing in that scene? Does that?
It would well, I would expect her to react like that because that's not her norm. She's not used to that situation. And I see it in the mortuary myself when you've got guards there, even you've got technical bureau who are not that seasoned, and you sometimes see them going. And that's always been one of the jobs in the mortuary, is keeping an eye on everybody and making sure everybody is coping.
Yes.
Because when you join as a guard, you think you're going to be helping an old lady across the road. You've been running after criminals. You never think that you're going to stand in a mortuary and see some awful mess of a body. And so you have to be very careful and just watch people, make sure that they are coping.
Right. So you have a sort of you have a kind of almost an empathy side to you as well, that you have to be thinking about other people and what their position is.
You have to. Oh, you have to. Yeah.
I think we can almost take it for granted that there's nothing that anybody could show you that will shock you. I think that's. I'm going to say that's fair to say. Yeah. But I'll ask you a different question then. Do you ever reflect after having seen a scene like this on what I will call the evil of man?
I mean, I've been asked that question before, not just by yourself, but by lawyers, by all sorts of people. And there are more good people out there than there are bad people. I mean, even if you look at the crime statistics, and particularly the homicide statistics, there's relatively few homicides in Ireland. And if you break it down into, looking at the whys and the wherefores, a lot of the time it's been people in the wrong place at the wrong time, getting involved in something, Very few people go out on a Saturday night and think, I might stab somebody in the bar tonight. Mm-hmm. Things happen, things get out of control. There's very few bad people, really bad people. There are a few, and by God, you don't want to meet them in a dark alley. And there's very few, because I always asked to profile, I would say mad, bad, and stupid. And most of us come into the category of being stupid. We just, do stupid things. But there are some people who have got mental health issues. There are people who've got psychiatric issues, which lead them down that path. And there are some really bad, vicious people. But they're few and far between, thank God.
So none of this life that you've spent has affected your optimism or your faith in humankind particularly?
No. In fact, it's reinforced it, because the more times you get involved in things and the more time you meet more and more people, because you could have a very jaundiced view of the world. But the reality is most people are good people.
I would agree. I'm one of those people who try to see the best in other people, and you're either one of those kind of people or you're not.
Yeah.
What does a pathologist do when it goes home at night? That's a leading question, because I sort of got the impression that, contrary to the idea that you would be, serious and morose and kind of fascinated with pursuing other grim activities, you actually would like to fill your, head with stupidity and silliness, maybe, is that right?
Exactly. And that's why I watch such nonsense on the television, why I read nonsense. It's because it clears the head. It just clears out all of those things that I've seen that day, and we start afresh the next day, as I say, with a head full of nonsense.
What kind of nonsense do you like watching to switch off or doing or reading?
Oh, I watch it. It's a lot. Everybody knows. I used to, no matter where I was in the country, I'd be home for Coronation Street. That was at 7:30, and there'd be a cup of tea waiting for me or a glass of wine, depending on how I sounded, obviously, on the way back. And Coronation Street would be on, and they would know, just keep out of our way for half an hour, and then all will be well again.
Yes. This is good. Why do people who know you and knew your profession, did you ever find they treated you any way differently, knowing what they know that you see?
People are just interested, and that can be a problem because, and particularly in Ireland, because everybody wants to know and everybody's nosy. and everybody's related to everybody else. There's always some, there's always a connection. So people want to find out what happened to Mary, sort of the two counties across, because she remembered one day that, Auntie Tilda was doing something and happened to mention that she'd seen this. So everybody wants to know things. And it can be quite annoying when people keep asking you, what was it like? What did you have? Did you find anything? And what does happen, and it happens to all of us forensic pathologists, is that your circle of friends becomes smaller and smaller because there's only so many people. You can't discuss the cases with anybody. And so you find, the people that you can trust and that won't, be asking all the questions, who don't really care. So you end up with people who really don't care about what you do.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. I mean, now you've just brought that up about Ireland. I mean, the parochial gossip nature of Ireland. I mean, Marie, what was it like? Go on, Marie. I mean, I knew her well, of course. She used to come into the shop the whole time. She used to buy bread and 20 fags. And listen, tell us, go on, paint the scene for me now. And you'd be there, sorry, darling, I just can't go there. But do you think Irish, I think that I think Irish people, the way Irish people, for example, treat funerals in a slightly different way to other countries.
Oh, yeah.
I think we have a slightly different relationship even with death than people in other countries. And some people even, surmise that Irish people might even be a little bit more interested in crime and all this, in observing crime and talking about crime and crime fiction and all this sort of stuff. Did you find that we were very interested in this subject?
Oh, yeah. I mean, having come from Glasgow and having done that as working as a forensic pathologist in Glasgow, which was very violent, and we had, our homicide rate that I dealt with when I was in Glasgow was much higher than Ireland. Nobody cared. Nobody wanted to know. It wasn't front page in the newspaper. Maybe page 4, maybe page 7, you would get a small paragraph about, Saturday night somebody got stabbed, somebody got shot, somebody got hit in the head with a hammer. And there wasn't that appetite to find out. And it may well be because it was a bigger place, more diverse, and they didn't have the connection that the Irish have with one another. And so it didn't matter. It's somebody else's problem, nothing to do with me, so I don't care. As long as it's not me, my family don't really care anything about it. Whereas, as I say, the Irish, there's the Irish connection, and so everybody is interested.
Yes, you've put the nail on the head there. We're all 6 degrees of separation in Ireland, and so it means so much more. Two or three. So we're all like know the fella who knew the fella, and we're there. Oh, Jesus, I can picture him now. I can picture his head split open into 3 there. Jesus, Tommy, I knew you so well. Christ almighty. And come here, I don't really want to particularly get into, I don't want to get into many of your cases, but did you find that there was any change in Ireland down through the last 20 years? And did you find that it got a little more difficult for you, or did you find that the cases you were being exposed to were maybe stretching you a bit in terms of how much you were prepared to put up with?
The way you keep yourself sane is you don't get involved in the investigation of the crime other than your part in it, which as a forensic pathologist is to determine the cause of death, to assist with identification if that's necessary, and to try and give an opinion on the circumstances, what could have happened, what's likely to have happened, what's unlikely to have happened. It never had anything to do with me, who was a perpetrator or why they did it. Nothing to do with me. That's for the Gardaí to investigate. I'll just tell you what happened in that hour, in that 5 minutes, in that 10 seconds or whatever. And so I never really dwelt on that side of things, and that way you don't get too involved. I've seen pathologists who say, I got a conviction in that case. That's nothing to do with me. Again, there are people who are sitting there. There's a jury who make that decision, and God help them. I wouldn't like to be in their position either. But with Annabelle Kriegel, it was the first time I had stood in a scene and gone, who did this and why? And once you start to go down that road, it's affecting you, because I'm supposed to be unbiased. I'm supposed to be there giving an independent opinion. And once you start looking at the whys, the wherefores, and who did it, you're straying into that territory of it influencing your opinion.
And why did you do that?
I don't know. It just happened. And I'd always said, if that ever does happen, I have to go, because that's going to affect me. That might be the only one that ever happened in it, but it might not. That might be where I'm heading for next. And
Yes.
you can't just sort of say, well, the next one will be okay, because what if the next one's not okay? And I said something out of turn.
Oh.
So after that, I thought, no, that's it. That'll do me. That's fine.
Yeah. So you were slightly worried that your professional armor was coming loose slightly, and that to prevent that from happening again, jeepers, you used that. That was incredibly sensitive and diligent of you to think that you didn't want that to happen again. That was amazing. So you felt maybe that at that point it represented a kind of a little bit of a turning point in your career.
I thought that it could be, and I couldn't take that. I mean, I couldn't take that chance that this was how I was going to react every time from now on, because that way lies madness if you're a forensic pathologist. And it's like I know pathologists who dabble in forensic pathology who become amateur lawyers. And I always think, no, that's not what you're not there as a lawyer. You're there as a pathologist. Just stay in your little box and the world will be fine. Once you start transgressing, once you start moving into other people's territory, it's not good. It's not good. So I've always said, I don't know anything about the law. I just know where the court is, what time I have to be there, and that I stand up and say, I'll tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
How did you find leaving your job? Was there a decompressing process, or was it a very natural, seamless end?
I was surprised, because once I'd made that decision, and I told my colleagues, they were all dumbfounded, because they said, but you don't know anything else. You've never done anything else. You spend your whole life doing this. And I said, oh, maybe this is a mistake. Maybe I should reconsider this.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I've decided I'm going, so I'm going. And I've never looked back. As soon as I walked through that door, I thought, again, I'm leaving it to the ones behind me. Let them get on with it. I'm not going to interfere. I don't want to. And that was one of the reasons why I left Ireland, because I thought I need to just go away, remove myself from the situation completely. Let them get used to me not being there. You can't keep phoning Auntie Marie to come and dig you out a hole. You have to find somebody else. You have to come back. You have to find the new state pathologist. Let them do their work, and not get what I used to get when I first came was, but Professor Harbison does it this way, and Professor Harbison does it that way. And I used to go, well, Professor Harbison is new today, so it's only me. So we're doing it this way. And I thought, no, I'll just walk away and let all the ones behind me get on with it, find their own feet. And as I say, I had no regrets, never had any regrets at leaving. It was time to go.
Yeah. Do you know what I think? Do you know the reason you had no regrets and you were able to? I think that you're one of those people. Now, I'm only speculating now, okay? But I think, Marie, you might be one of those people who's very good at compartmentalization.
Yeah.
Right? It's called compartmentalization. Now, we know what that means from the word compartment. But it's also, I'm afraid to say, Marie, one of the greatest traits of psychopaths.
Exactly. Have you done that test as well, Ed?
So I'm afraid to say that all along our state pathologist was a fucking psychopath.
I think the homicide rate went up as soon as I said, yeah.
Was it mutual? Was it causation here, or was it just a coincidence? Mari, are you sure you weren't the fucking doer? Oh, look what we found here. Oh, I can tell you exactly what happened to this poor lad. I fucking done it. I chopped him up good, so he did.
Mari, I'm so glad we got to this point in the conversation where I was able to actually do this with you, and you were able to take it. So a psychopath then, you are a psychopath, and you've accepted that. But can I ask you a question which is easy to answer? Because you won't have to give away anything by answering this, but you will have to answer the question yes or no, and then the rest of us can speculate. No, Ireland is very small, right? And we all have, as you said, 2 degrees of separation with each other. And we all wanted to know what happened to so-and-so. So, you don't have to tell me who, but did anybody well-known ever ring you going, I didn't want to make this call, but I thought I'd have to ring you to ask you. Did anybody famous ever talk to you going, go on, or a politician or anything? You don't have to mention their names now.
Politicians, because, I mean, that's one of the things about Ireland is that, you know, in the UK, if you're miffed, you might go to your local councillor and say, look, things are, you know, there's potholes in the road. No, not in Ireland. You go straight to the top. So I've had a few phone calls. And the good thing was because, you know, I wasn't brought up in Ireland. I came in my adult years. I had no idea who I was most of the time. So they would phone up and they'd say, do you know who I am? And I could say, I haven't a bloody clue. You'll go to the end of the line like everybody else. Thank you for calling. Bye.
That is hilarious. But you're talking about well-known people here, aren't you?
Oh, these are your nice TDs and people who are doing the best for their local families.
But they were also being nosy.
They are.
Easy. Yeah, that's gas. That's gas. I could nearly picture now who was ringing you actually, you know, because we know them so well, you know. That's fascinating stuff. Oh yeah, there's some callers on the line who want to talk to you, Mari. And callers, yeah. So just can you hear them there? Yeah. Do you know who's on the line who'd love to talk to you? Daniel O'Donnell is on the line, the singer. How are you doing, Mari? It's lovely to talk to you. You're a lovely wee lady, I must say. And I've really, really enjoyed all your stories about all the bodies and everything lying there. And what really struck me was how you like to fill your head with silly things to get your mind off it. Is that correct?
Correct, Daniel.
It is. So, did you ever have me going through your head when you were looking at them bodies? Me singing, I wanna dance with you. Oh,
yeah. You put me to sleep, Daniel. So thank you so much for that.
It was great. So it's me you're thinking of when you're looking at these decapitations, etc. Is it? Well, no better man.
No better man.
I know. Sure, there's lots of stuff happening up here in Donegal. We could have got your hand helped with, but sure. Anyway, you weren't available.
My granny was from Donegal. I know.
What was her name?
Oh, I'm not telling you that. You might know her.
Right, but of course I know her. She used to be at my concerts, wasn't she? She'd be up the front waving the underpants at me. I remember her. Do you know what? I think she committed about 8 murders, that woman.
Was that all? Oh, good God.
Absolutely.
Jesus, we'll dump it out of the family.
Oh, thanks, Daniel. Roy Keane is on the line. You know Roy Keane, the soccer player?
Oh, I know Roy too. Yeah.
Say hi to Roy.
Hi, Roy.
Yeah, how's it going? Absolutely delighted to meet you. I've been absolutely intrigued listening to this conversation. I think your job is great. I think your job is... I would have loved to have your job. Probably, you don't remember, but we met once. Do you remember?
Let me think. No, I'll go and ask my husband because, you know, he'd love to see you. Could you send him a signed shirt?
Yeah, of course I will. But you and I met once. It was after a particularly ferocious tackle I did on a lad, and he actually ended up dying. You came over to Man United, had a look at him, and you determined that the cause of death was Roy Keane's right boot. So it was incredible how accurate you were. I put my foot right through his face, and you actually knew by the imprint of the boot in his mouth whose boot it was, and in that lovely accent you had, you went, it's Roy Keane. And only Alex Ferguson knew what you were talking about because he was from the same area of the world you were.
So, I see, it's bad people like you that keep me in business.
Brilliant. Roy Keane. I see you're attracting all the celebs, Mari.
Finally, the judge from one of the judges from Dancing with the Stars is on. Remember, Brian Redmond is on.
Oh, Brian. Oh,
hello, Brian. Good evening to you, Marie. Lovely to talk to you again. Unlike most of your patients, you managed to keep your head while you were doing the foxtrot, which was absolutely brilliant. And I'd like to congratulate you for being... why are you making that face? You didn't like me.
No, of course I didn't like you. You were a rubbish judge. I told you when I met you that the after party, I said, thank God you don't work in the criminal courts. And that's all I'm saying.
Well, all I could say, Marie, is thank God I'm still alive and not lying in a ditch over in Glasgow or outside London. What you wanted to do with me is lay waste to my face. Well, Marie, you've been absolutely brilliant, Kraken. Thanks so much. I actually knew from your other interviews, from having watched you, that you were chirpy but I didn't realise you were such a good sense of humour and so up for the crack. Can I thank you for sharing this conversation with me and for giving your time? And I want to wish you good luck with your burgeoning writing career. And are you going to write more?
Yep, in the process of a follow-up. So there you go.
And any offers to get them? Anybody buying the rights to have them put on TV or film yet?
Oh, all offers gratefully received.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, congratulations on your second career, and congratulations on your first career. And thank you ever so much for talking to me today.
Such a delight. Lovely to speak to you.
And my thanks to Marie Cassidy for talking to me on the Mario Rosenstock podcast. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm mariorosenstock@gmail.com, and I read them all and I get back to most of them, as many of you already know. Please be on the lookout for that special announcement regarding Gift Grub Live 25. See you same time, same place next week.